Good morning. I'm Nana Hinesley with Launch Strategically, and I have the pleasure of introducing to you Paula Shepard. Paula Shepard is a business confidence coach. It's a mouthful to say, but she didn't always start off as somebody who had a confidence voice. She went the corporate route and has quite a story regarding her career. So Paula, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here. It's an honor.
Oh, you're so sweet. Well, why don't you just tell us a little bit about your career and where it went and how you ended up where you are today?
Ooh, so I feel like it started very similarly to a lot of people, where I went to college to get a good job and make a lot of money. And I started out in nonprofits. I loved my job, but again, I wasn't making a lot of money. It was back when there weren't a lot of jobs when I came out of college. So it was slim pickings, and I managed to get this amazing job working for what was the Baltimore Zoo at the time. And I was event planning. And I gradually graduated into working for an event company, which I also really loved. But when it was time for me to have a family, when I felt like I was being called to do that, having that job was exhausting. And it wasn't something that I could continue to do and have a family. There were lots of all-nighters. There were just things that weren't going to be conducive to doing that. And so I found a job with my sister's help. She had just graduated from college and was working for a Fortune 500 company. What I wound up doing was very similar to project management, which was incredibly similar to event planning. I convinced them that that was the case, and I thought I had made it. I started making more money. So year over year with performance reviews, I was making more and more money. But what I didn't realize as I then moved to a new company, another Fortune 500 company in the same industry, which was, tech and defense, was I was becoming a robot. I was showing up every day. I was supporting someone else's mission. That mission wasn't front and center. I wasn't able to be myself there. So I started to take those steps a little bit later on in life to be who I was. I got my nose pierced, and I remember the first time I got a tattoo. So I got this tattoo. It's just a breast cancer ribbon on my wrist. And I remember going into the office and making sure I wore big chunky bracelets to cover it up. And I made sure also that my nose ring was not a ring, but it was a stud. And it was so tiny that honestly, people didn't even realize that I have it pierced. So while I was taking these itty bitty micro steps to being who I really was, I honestly was still hiding because I was trying to fit in. And the turning point for me really honestly was when we had gone through a performance review in my job, and I was a corporate manager, and I was described as a bull in a china shop. And I looked back on the way that I was reaching out and I was stretching, and it's okay to describe someone as that, but I also felt like, wow, that's a really accurate depiction, but not because I needed to change who I was, but because I was in the wrong location. So I started looking for another job, and I realized how hard it was because I didn't have a technical degree and I was working in the technical industry. And even though I was really successful and I was making well over 6 figures a year, I was really, I couldn't find anything because I didn't have the degree. That's what they were focused on.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I hired a coach, and I didn't even know what I was doing. Someone recommended I hire a coach. And it was a career coach. And I thought she was just going to help me with my resume and she was going to find me another job. And what actually wound up happening is she helped me kind of tap into some things and realize what my strengths were. And she told me that I was a natural coach. And from there, I started doing what I do best, which is trying to learn everything I could about coaching, enrolled in a coaching program. And within a year, I had quit my job. And here I am. This week is a year. It's been a year of me full-time in my business. And I had the biggest sales month I've ever had in my 11th month. And I'm just loving every moment.
So for somebody who, especially a young woman who's starting out in her career, in some ways, you almost have to go through some of the other things just to figure out who you are professionally. Would you say that's accurate?
I think in some ways you do. I think it's all an experiment, right? So you get to decide whether or not you want to go to college. I think back when I did, if you didn't go to college, there was something wrong with you. You weren't smart enough. There was something there. And like, the smart people went to college. There was a stigma around what you did the moment you graduated. And here you were, in the US, not able to even, drink alcohol or make those choices for yourself. But people are asking you what you want to do for the whole rest of your life. And what they were subconsciously doing is telling you that you have to make this decision and that was what you were going to be forever. So I don't believe that is true. In fact, I have 4 children. 3 of them will be in high school this year. And
wow.
I always used to think, well, they'll go to college and we have to start saving for college. But being an entrepreneur myself now, after, leaving my job in my early 40s, has demonstrated to me that if they don't go to college, it's okay, that there are skills that they can learn right now and start making way more money and enjoying life at the same time without ever having to go to college first. And then taking the steps to get those degrees or those certifications or credentials that they want once they've done a little bit more experimenting about what they want to be. I love multi-passionate people. I love learning a little bit about everything. I'm not the expert in every single area, but I definitely think you don't have to make those choices when you're coming out of high school. And I don't think that you have to go to college or get a particular job to get the experience.
I absolutely agree. Absolutely. So tell me, who do you work with today? Who are your clients? What types of people?
So I tend to work with women. I have worked with some men. So I'm open to working with everyone. Most of the people that I'm working with have worked with other coaches before. They've been in business for about a year. There are newer people that are thinking, I just want to be in a business, but I don't even know what that is. Ultimately, the problem is many of my clients are introverted, and shockingly enough, because I'm not, but they have not been given the opportunity to use their voice. And many of them do not know how to self-advocate. They're not great at setting boundaries. They're very heart-centered people. So setting that boundary between being kind and being business is very difficult. They don't want to show up and have, for lack of a better term, they don't want people to think that they're bitchy. And so they sacrifice themselves in order to help other people. And those are generally the people that I'm working with. So a lot of people that are in wanting to work in nonprofits, working with change makers, are change makers themselves, and are just not seeing the shift because they've allowed people to permeate their boundaries over the time that they've been in business or in their entire life, honestly.
How do people arrive at the realization that they need your help?
That is such an interesting question. I think when I work with people, because I feel like strategies and tactics, yes, they're important in business, but those are the cherry on top, right? That's the sprinkles that we add at the back end. A lot of the conversations that I have with people where they realize they need my help over someone else's happens very naturally in conversation. And what they realize is they cannot define who they are in 5 words or less, right? Like, who are you without being a role? You're not just a mom. You're not just a business owner. You're not a wife. You're not a daughter. You're not those titles and the hats that you wear. And when they realize that they've been grasping for something outside of themselves instead of doing the really hard work on themselves first, that's when they realize, okay, this is why it's not working, because I don't even know who I am. So I'm not sure how to represent myself out in the world.
And in my own life experience, I found that people, especially moms, if they've been busy raising a family, that's who they are. And that's how they define themselves. And they don't even know what their purpose is once they have the freedom to pursue some of their own interests.
Exactly. And what happens then? Moms, I'm always so-and-so's mom, right? I've got 4 kids. And so, I'm Brantley's mom. I'm Michaela's mom. Kids don't even call you by your name, and you get used to that. But unfortunately, what it does is it it's demeaning. And we don't as people stand up and say, no, my name is actually this, or you can call me this. Right. And we lose a bit of ourselves in our title, and it affects who we are in our relationships as well. So even when we're talking about, this isn't just about your business, right? This is about who you are in your life and your relationships, ultimately starting with yourself. And this, like you mentioned, you become the mom, for instance. What happens when your kids are gone? You've lost a piece of your identity. And if you don't know who you are, that's ultimately going to then affect your relationship with your spouse. You know, you've probably know people who have, shown up and had their kids leave, you know, empty nesters, and then all of a sudden their relationships fall apart. And so this is so much bigger than we realize, the necessity of becoming more aware of who we are and dropping the armor and being okay with not being liked.
So do you have, let's talk about, I'm thinking you might have a Facebook group that somebody could dip their feet in to learn more about what you do.
I do. So the name of my Facebook community is I Am Becoming Community, Confidence, and Collaboration. And that is inherently what we do. I am not the expert in every field, and I want people to use their voice. I want them to show up, introduce themselves, start to discover themselves, ask for help, self-advocate, you know, get things off their chest, start to partner with other people. So entrepreneurship can feel like a lonely journey, right? So that is the premise of this community. It's a place for us to gather together, to learn more about yourself, and to do it alongside people that are going the same path.
So if you had some advice for somebody starting their career, what would be your best advice?
I think the first thing that you need to do when you're starting your career or pursuing entrepreneurship is to decide what your personal values are, right? Ultimately, we are a personal brand. We are, you know, we think about branding as business, but we are a personal brand. And the only way that your job, your relationship, right, your business, your friendships are going to work out is if you show up in every place and every space as yourself. So if you can't do that, if the grocery store and at home and with your friends and at the PTA meeting, you are a slightly different person, my recommendation would be to decide who you really are and understand why you're not showing up that way, right? Uncovering your fears. That's the very first step.
That's outstanding. Well, thank you so much. If people want to get a hold of you, Paula, where would you like them to reach out to you?
The best place to do that is either on my website, which is thecourageblueprint.com. You can follow me in my Facebook community, which is, again, I Am Becoming. You can do that search. You can also search Be Fearless with Paula. I'm on all the platforms there. And finally, I also do have a podcast. It's called The Confidence Sessions, and you can find that on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and anywhere else that you listen to podcasts. I would love to be able to support you and meet you exactly where you are.
I just love what you're doing. I just think it's so powerful and it has so much meaning. And I think you're impacting a lot of people. And so I just want to thank you so much for talking with me today and sharing what you do.
Well, thank you so much for helping me to amplify my message and my voice, what you're doing to educate and empower other people and bringing them on is so in alignment with what I do. So thanks to you for allowing me to be here. It's really an honor.
Of course. No, my pleasure. I hope you have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you. You too.